the third time I've tried to start this video. I'm experiencing such brain fog. I think it's the cloudiness and the shift in the weather outside, because all of a sudden it got really hot here in Georgia for February. It's like in the 70s Fahrenheit in Georgia. But also my stomach was pretty upset last night, and I think I'm still recovering from that, and I just feel, oh my lord, my brain just feels so foggy. So I'm taking a break from studying, from intense research and writing, but I still want to be productive. So I figured, hey, let's record another video for Fertility February. Woohoo! So yeah, this video is going to be me sharing one of my previous fertility charts, because I know if you haven't really heard about the Fertility Awareness Method and you don't know much about it, well, you've come to the right place. And if you're watching this in February 2019, check out my intro video, which I will have appear in the cards up in the upper right hand corner of the screen. In that intro video, I give details about how you can enter into a giveaway, and I'm going to give away this book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility. This is basically the unofficial Fertility Awareness Method Bible. I've read it, I love it. I'm rereading it right now, some of the chapters and some of the information. It's just, it is so chock full of so much information about the menstrual cycle, about fertility, about things that you might see in your charts, about how to chart your fertility and how to prevent pregnancy or achieve pregnancy, and just keep up with your overall fertility health. So check out that video if you're interested in being part of the giveaway. At the end of the month, at the end of this February, I will order a copy on Amazon and have it shipped to the winner's house or whatever address that they give me. So check that out. It's also a very important video because I give kind of the ground rules for this series, what you can expect from me, the type of information that I'm going to be sharing, what I'm not going to be sharing, keeping in mind that I am not a fertility awareness expert, I'm not certified, I'm not a coach or anything, I'm just sharing my experiences. So yeah, just bear all that in mind, and please check out the intro video. That's where all that information can be found. But I'm here today sharing one of my previous charts. This is a chart from September and October of 2018, last year. And just kind of talking about some of the basics and just showing like what a chart can look like, what one of my charts looks like, because I know if you're fairly new to the method or you don't know much about it, but you hear about charting, you're charting your cycles, charting, it might seem kind of daunting and overwhelming. Especially when you look at the chart. Here's a sneak peek, and it's all full of information. You got like this graph thing going on here and all these notes, and I have little color-coded stuff down here, and it just looks overwhelming at first, but believe me, it's not. Charting my cycle, which I do on the daily, takes no more than 5 to 7 minutes of my time max. You know, I take my temperature in the morning. I use this thermometer. This is a glass thermometer. And this is a nice segue to this. This is the brand. I kept the packaging. And this is it comes in like this nifty little container thing. But last year I dropped my old one and it broke, but I kept the container. But it is this brand, Geratherm. If you live in the United States, the best way to get your hands on one of these is by ordering it online through Walmart. They don't actually sell these in the physical Walmart stores, but you can get a hold of one through Walmart, like their online shopping website, because it's actually pretty hard to find an old school glass thermometer. And I use a glass thermometer because I've used just your normal electronic or battery powered thermometer, but I found it to be, I didn't trust the accuracy of the thermometer because the batteries would wear down, and I also found it kind of wasteful having to buy batteries over and over again. But basically, I mean, whatever type of thermometer you pick, it's up to you, whatever best fits your lifestyle if you do the symptothermal method, which is basically you're tracking your basal body temperatures and the cervical mucus that your body produces. But this is the thermometer I use. I have a little timer on my cell phone. When I wake up in the morning before I get out of bed, I turn the timer on, I stick this baby in my mouth for 3 minutes because that's what the instructions tells you. And I'll include the link to this thermometer in the description box below for you on the Walmart website. I know Walmart sucks and it's not the best or most ethical corporation, but it's really the only place. I couldn't even find a decently priced glass thermometer on Amazon. But anyway, so yeah, the instructions for this thermometer say you stick it in your mouth, under your tongue for 3 minutes. After those 3 minutes, I record the temperature. For example, my temperature this morning was 97.4, which is pretty low, but that's because I'm shifting from menstruation into the follicular phase, which I'll talk more about here in a second. And my temperatures usually go low during that time. Yeah, so 3 minutes in the morning and then a few minutes at night when I record my observations when it comes to my cervical fluid and little things throughout the day, what my mood was like, if I experienced any breast sensitivity, if I noticed any acne breakouts, if I had a headache that day. I record all of that because it helps you to kind of see the pattern. So really, like, no more than 5 to 7 minutes throughout your day, you build this chart throughout your cycle. And then at the end of your cycle, you have this beautiful chart chock full of information that you can go back and reference and try to see what the patterns are, right? I'll get into that in a second. So this is the thermometer I use. This little cute bag a friend gave me. I use it to hold my pens. My main pen is just this little Sharpie pen. It's a very fine tip. I don't know if you'll be able to see that very well, but it's basically the same pen that I use for my bullet journaling. But that's what I use for the most part, and then I also sometimes like to throw a little color in there and color code some stuff. I don't really use this green pen very much, or the highlighters, but for example, in general, for moodiness and PMS symptoms, if I'm tracking that, I use purple. For breast sensitivity, especially as I'm approaching my period, I use this blue. And then to mark my temperature shift and stuff like that, for when I'm in my fertile phase, I use this pink. So you can have a little bit of fun with it too. Now, the basics of charting. Well, first of all, before I get into the basics of charting, let me give this caveat, and it's the same caveat that I gave in the introduction video that I linked up here in this corner here. And I'll also have the introductory video linked in the description box below. But basically, because I'm not a fertility awareness method coach, I'm not certified, I'm not a medical professional in any way, I am going to withhold the details and the specific rules to follow for preventing pregnancy on the fertility awareness method, because I don't want to give anyone the false impression that they could just watch a couple of YouTube videos and get it perfectly and perfectly prevent pregnancy, because that would just be disastrous. Especially for those who are looking to use the method as their primary means of preventing pregnancy, of birth control, It's a loud truck driving by. Sorry guys, I live close to a busy road. So I'm not going to give the exact details, but I do think it's important to give some of the basic information. And it's really unfortunate that overall, from my experience, from my personal experience, from talking to other people who menstruate, at least in this country and in the region of this country where I live, which is the South, which is very conservative and it's the Bible Belt and all that, we're not really taught any of this information. Like, I didn't find out about this until I was 29 years old. I'm 31 now. I just turned 31 in December. I didn't know how to tell when I was fertile or not, because I wasn't taught anything about that. I didn't know how the hormones fluctuate throughout my cycle. I didn't know, I wasn't taught anything. I was just taught abstinence only. You know, like they didn't even show a demonstration of how to put on a condom when I was in high school. It was literally just abstinence only, don't have sex until marriage. If you have sex before you get married, condoms will break, you will end up pregnant, you will end up with an STD, you know, like just a whole bunch of misinformation. And it's such a shame that like I didn't understand how my own body worked until I was 29 years old. And it was thanks to this book, right? Oh, so this is the basic information, but this might be new information to you if you had a similar experience like I had with your formal or even informal sexual health education, which is such a shame. Oh, it should be a crime in my opinion. But anyway, that's a whole different video for a different day. Let's get into the basics. I'm actually going to crack open this book because there's a really nifty section here where they include a bunch of colored photographs and inserts. Okay, so I wanted to show you, okay, when it comes to tracking your fertility, first things first, if you menstruate, if you have a functioning uterus and ovaries, and if you know, if they're working, if you haven't gone through menopause yet, or you haven't had surgery on them yet, and all that kind of stuff, that means that in general, for the typical menstrual cycle, which there is no typical menstrual cycle because everybody's cycles are different, but let's just pretend there's one, right? For the typical menstrual cycle of somebody with a functioning uterus and ovaries, you are only really fertile in the sense that there is only a risk of pregnancy maybe 5 days to, let's give a conservative estimate of this, 7 days of your cycle. And that is because the egg, once it's released at ovulation, it only lives 24, 48 hours max, right? However, your cervix is producing different qualities of mucus or fluid. Some people prefer the word fluid because mucus weirds them out. I don't care. So I say mucus, but your cervix, assuming everything's healthy and functioning and stuff, right? It produces different quality of mucus as you're approaching ovulation. And the mucus quality is very important because that is what allows sperm, if there is sperm inside you, that is what allows the sperm to survive for multiple days, right? And so cervical mucus is actually the number one thing that is going to, that you track. It's the number one piece of information that your body is telling you that there is a risk of pregnancy. Or, I mean, I use the Fertility Awareness Method to prevent pregnancy, so that's where my mind automatically goes. I'm sure there are people out there who are interested in using it to achieve pregnancy. So, so the cervical mucus is the number one thing that you're going to track. The number one in the sense that it's the most important thing that you're going to track. So let me just zoom in here because in this book, in the color inserts toward the back of the book, they include this amazing chart that shows you the different quality of cervical mucus that you're going to see as you shift from menstruation, like once your period is over, towards ovulation, right? And so it's going to go from, and everybody's body is different, but in general, it's going to go from dry to a sticky, a crumbly, or a rubbery texture to a creamy, wet, or milky lotion texture. And then the most fertile quality cervical fluid or mucus that usually happens right around the time of ovulation or for the few days leading up to ovulation will be a slippery, clear, and stretchy egg white consistency, as you can see in these pictures. And when I'm at my most fertile, I hover kind of between these two extremes. So a clear, slippery, but not stretchy kind of lubrication feeling, as you can see in this picture, or a streaky, what I call opaque, because it's not clear, but it's an opaque, stretchy, slippery consistency. This is the stuff that's going to keep the sperm alive inside of you, right? So really, for those of us with ovaries and uteruses who menstruate, right, we're only fertile a maximum of 7 days out of our cycle, right? And that 7 days it's a conservative overestimate, you know, but if you're using this method to prevent pregnancy, you want to overestimate that, right? However, for those of us who, if you have a partner, right, with a penis and testicles, right, they are fertile 24/7, 365, right? So if you have a uterus and ovaries and you're menstruating regularly and all that, you're fertile somewhere between 5 and 7 days out of your cycle. Again, overestimating that just to be safe. If you have a penis and testicles and all that is functioning, and you produce sperm, you're fertile all the time. Assuming the sperm is of good quality and blah, 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 right? So, yeah, it's really, really important to pay attention to the cervical mucus or fluid, whatever you want to call it. It's the most important factor to consider to track in your charts, and I'll show you here in a second how I track it. The second most important factor or sign of fertility that you're going to chart, and let me zoom out a little bit here, is going to be your basal body temperature. And really, there's 3 main things that you're going to track. That's number 1, cervical mucus, right? Number 2 is basal body temperature, which is your waking temperature. And then number 3 is the position and kind of texture of your cervix. I don't check my cervix at all because I find that my cervical mucus and my temperature are more than enough. And really, your temperature and cervical position and texture, they only kind of corroborate the first and most important sign of fertility, which is the cervical mucus, right? So this is an amazing chart. It kind of looks all over the place if you don't really know much about the method, and if you haven't really studied it much, but it makes sense. So on the top part here, they show the different hormones and how they fluctuate throughout the cycle. Here, they show how the follicles in your ovaries develop towards ovulation throughout the cycle. Here, this is how your uterine lining sheds and then rebuilds throughout the cycle. This is what your cervical position is going to look like throughout the cycle, your cervical fluid throughout the cycle, and then your waking temperatures throughout the cycle. So as you can see here, I'm going to focus on the 2 extremes, the top and the bottom parts here. There are 4 hormones, at least, involved in the menstrual cycle. The 2 that most of us have heard of are estrogen and progesterone, and those are the 2 that I'm going to focus on. But there's also a luteinizing hormone, and then I can't remember what FSH stands for. Something about the follicles, about developing the follicles so that the egg is released, right? So if we assume that this is the duration of someone's menstrual cycle, right? They're having their period here. And then, if you look at estrogen, which is the red line, it's kind of hard to see. The estrogen starts building and building. And the same with LH, and FSH, those other hormones. But let's just focus on estrogen for now. The estrogen starts building and building as you approach ovulation, which is when the egg is released here. As you can see, they have a little picture of how the follicle develops and then eventually releases an egg at ovulation. But then, after ovulation, the estrogen plummets, right? This red line here goes down. Well, actually it peaks right around or right before ovulation, and then it dips. But then you see progesterone, which is this blue line here, after ovulation, it goes up. So before ovulation, you're estrogen dominant, because estrogen is crucial for helping the egg develop and allowing it to be released. After ovulation, estrogen drops and you become progesterone dominant, right? And that shows up in your chart, in your temperatures. So this is what, if we zoom in a little bit here, this is what your waking temperatures might look like in your chart. And that's the reason why I picked this chart, because it follows that pattern. It kind of shows the pattern pretty clearly. So I'll get into that here in a second. So when you're estrogen dominant, your temperatures are going to be lower. But once progesterone is released, your temperatures jump. There's an actual jump in temperature between at least 0.3 of a degree, right? Sometimes even more, like a whole degree. It'll go from like 97.4 to 98.4 if you work with Fahrenheit like I do, right? So that's another way that you can see what's happening with your body. You can see how these hormones are fluctuating based on what your temperatures are doing. For example, and this can tell you a lot about the health of your endocrine system, of your hormones, making sure that you're making enough hormones. For example, if you're looking to get pregnant, right? If you notice that after ovulation, when your temperatures are supposed to be higher, if you notice that you have a bunch of temperatures that keep falling, that might be, and you definitely would have to talk to a health professional about this, right? Don't take my word for it, but that could be a sign that you're not producing enough progesterone, right? And if you're not producing enough progesterone, that could be a problem if you want to get pregnant, especially. Because if you're not making enough progesterone, then your likelihood of having a miscarriage goes up, right? So that would be something to talk to your doctor about. And if you chart your cycles, you can come to your doctor with this information and give them direction as to where they need to go with their different types of tests and blood tests or whatever they got to do, you know? So this chart in this book is really, really helpful, and I think it gives a nice overview of like what is happening, what are the fluctuations, and how do all these signs come together to tell you exactly what's happening with your body. So let's move over and start looking at my chart. So let's focus on the top half first. Oh, wrong way. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so we're basically from here up. So this is my chart from September to October. It was from, I guess I had my period on November 29th. That was cycle day 1. And then on October, what is this, 26th? I can't read my handwriting. But from November 29th to October 26th, I think, or 25th actually, that was my cycle. So this was actually a 27-day cycle, which is a little bit long for me because my cycles tend to be pretty short. But yeah, as you can see here, this is where I record my waking temperatures in Fahrenheit, because I live in the US. We use Fahrenheit. Sorry, rest of the world. But actually, I'll include the link to this, to the website for the Taking Charge book, because on the website you can download paper charts, and you can download charts that are specifically for birth control. So this is a birth control chart that I'm using, a pregnancy chart, and they come in both Fahrenheit and Celsius. So I'll include that information down below. But yeah, as you can see here, right at the beginning of my cycle, my temperature went down as I was on my period, and it stayed down around in the upper 97s. Here we have 97.6, 97.8, 0.8, 0.8. It went up a little bit, and you will see some little discrepancies. Like, no one has a typical chart because everybody's body is different, everybody's cycles are going to be different, and it really takes probably about 3 or 4 cycles for you to start to see your own body's patterns and get to know them, right? But in general, my temperatures are 98 or below in the first half or so of my cycle, as you can see here. And actually, I had a temperature as low as 97. This is the lowest temperature I've ever recorded on myself. It really dipped way down, and it dipped super down because there was a jump. And actually, it was so low that I just kind of covered it up and pretended it was an outlier. So I just went from the day before and connected these two. And in the book, she talks about that rule of thumb, as she calls it. If you can put a thumb over it and then it clears up the pattern for you, then that's totally fine. But again, that's kind of advanced stuff. So anyway, here we see a temperature shift, right? And really the shift happened all the way here, like a full degree shift happened. So I drew a little box around that because that tells me that most likely I ovulated sometime within the last day or so in this time frame, between cycle days 11 through 13. So probably on cycle day 12 I ovulated. And I'm fairly certain about that because if we look down here where I record my cervical fluid, I was producing the egg white super high quality, or high quality in the sense that it was super fertile quality, egg white cervical fluid between cycles days 8 to 12. But then after cycle day 12, it started drying up, as you can see here. So that tells me most likely I ovulated on cycle day 12, which is also the day of the new moon. And here I record which ovary I think it was, because I believe it's called Mittelschmerz is the name of it. I can't remember, but Mittelschmerz is like a benign condition. It's like where you feel a little twinge of pain in your ovaries around the time of ovulation. It doesn't mean that ovulation actually occurred, because it could just be that you're sensitive and you're feeling the follicle develop, right? Which is what I think was happening, because I felt a little twinge of pain on my left ovary for several days, right? And if the pain is like really, really bad, you might need to go talk to a doctor and get that checked out, make sure it's not like a cyst or something like that. But I felt a twinge of pain on my left ovary. After cycle day 12, I started drying up and I stopped producing the fertile quality cervical fluid. And also after cycle day 12, if we look back up at my temperatures, my temperature jumped up to above 98, and in general, with the exception of this one day here, which I would just cover with my thumb again, just to see the pattern, right? My temperature stayed above 98. So here in general, before ovulation, when I'm producing that super fertile quality cervical fluid, right? It's below 98, and then ovulation happens at around cycle day 12, and then it's above 98. So that is the pattern. That's the classic pattern. And again, everybody's body is different. You might have longer cycles. You might have a 33-day cycle on average, and so you might not actually ovulate until cycle day 18 or something like that, you know. That's why it's important for you to to take the time to practice the method, especially if you're going to use this method to prevent pregnancy. Read the book. Really, take your time to read this book, right? Find a certified fertility awareness teacher or coach if you feel you need extra guidance. And then take at least, I would say, at least 3 or 4 cycles to practice charting, to understand how your body works, what is normal for you. And once you learn what is normal for you, the outliers or the exceptions to the rule will stand out more to you, and they might be little tidbits of information letting you know that a problem might be developing, something that you might need to talk to your doctor about might be developing, or something like that, right? So just really quickly, now that you kind of you understand the pattern and how that pattern matches with what's going on hormonally in your cycle and in terms of your cervical fluid and all that kind of stuff, if we continue down my chart, you see here, I keep track of my sexual activity throughout the cycle, which is important if you are, whether you're trying to prevent or achieve pregnancy. It's important to keep track of, especially if you're in a heterosexual relationship like I am, to keep track of that, to make sure that you use the proper measures. Some people, usually based on religious reasons, abstain from sex when they know that they're fertile. Other people, like me and my partner, we just use a condom. So if we want to have penis and vagina intercourse, right, when we know that there's a risk of pregnancy, we use a condom. Or we do oral sex, or other options where there's no risk of pregnancy, right? And that has worked for us for years. We've been using condoms for years, and it's fine. And if there is a problem with the condom, like if we experience a condom breaking or something like that, then we would immediately go to a pharmacy as soon as possible and get Plan B, because I don't have any religious or moral reasons against Plan B or anything like that. But that's going to depend up to you and what you feel comfortable with. There's a whole lot of options out there as to what you can do while you're fertile but you're horny. If you're in that heterosexual relationship situation like I am, right? Okay, so I keep track of my sexual activity with myself and with my husband. Here, of course, I'm keeping track of the cervical fluid, but also my period, and if I'm experiencing any spotting. As you can see here, I experienced 2 days of spotting at the end of my period, and then at the end of my cycle, right before the next period started, I had spotting as well. I keep track of the vaginal sensation when I know that I'm fertile, because if your cervix is producing that fertile quality cervical mucus or fluid or whatever, it does change how it feels on the vaginal opening, especially as you wipe when you go to the bathroom, so you can keep track of that, because that's more information letting you know. It's your body letting you know exactly what's going on. And then here I keep track of the color and the texture of my cervical fluid, and also the color and the texture of my menstrual fluid, of my blood, because that is a little window into your health too, to make sure that you're producing high quality, healthy menstrual blood. Because I've noticed, for example, in the past when I was under periods of stress, like really stressful situations, it showed up in my menstrual blood. It made my blood more brown, and it just didn't have that beautiful vibrant red color that it does now that I'm taking better care of myself, right? I also keep track of the amount that I bleed, because I use a Diva cup, and the Diva cup has measurement lines inside. This is kind of an estimate because I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but for example, this cycle I know I bled somewhere around 28 to 30 milliliters of blood, which is typical for me. And then the bottom part of the chart is really just extra information. You can really fill out this bottom part however you wish. I keep track of, you know, did I take my vitamins that day? Whatever exercise I might do, which is usually going to the gym or doing yoga for me. And then I keep track of what was going on that day. For example, I had a few days here where I marked in purple for my PMS and moodiness that I keep track. Anywhere I put an X in purple was kind of a rough day for me emotionally. And then I write down why. For example, on this day was the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, and I wrote down fuck Kavanaugh because fuck that douchebag, right? Anyway, and then here in blue I keep track of did I experience breast pain and sensation, because I've noticed that another sign that my body tells me that ovulation has occurred is as soon as ovulation occurs and that progesterone starts pumping until my next cycle, of course, my breasts get a little bit bigger and more sensitive and swollen. So that's another sign that I keep track of. And then sometimes I experience some acne, especially when I'm really stressed out, and then headaches. But as you can see here, I wrote down rain. That was a sinus pressure headache, right? But sometimes my headaches happen, especially when I'm stressed out. They happen around the time of ovulation and then right before my period. So that's another thing that my body is letting me know, like, hey, you're not doing a good job of managing your stress this cycle. So I'm letting you know that by giving you headaches. So maybe you can improve on that and like prevent these headaches for future cycles, right? But that, in a nutshell, let me zoom out a little bit, is what one of my charts look like. And my current chart, let me show you what my current chart looks like. It's a blank slate, more or less, because today is cycle day 4 for me, so I only have 3 days worth of information here. Or actually 2 days worth, because today is actually cycle day 3. So it goes from looking like this to looking like something like this, or this. These are from 2017. These are older charts, right? So yeah, that is what charting looks like in a nutshell. And I hope that kind of clarifies and demystifies things for you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them below. But please keep in mind that I purposefully left out key information about preventing pregnancy and stuff, because you really need to do your research and read the book for that. But if you have any questions about my daily routine and how I fit all of this into my daily routine or anything like that, feel free to pop them below. Please, if you're interested in possibly winning your own copy of this book, check out that introduction video, which I have linked below and in the cards up here. And until next time, happy charting. I think next time we're going to talk about how fertility awareness, how this method has helped to revolutionize my understanding of consent and bodily autonomy, and the knowledge I have about my body, and how that has helped me to feel more empowered about myself. So that video is coming up next. I'm super excited to get on that. And yeah, thanks for coming on this journey with me. Bye!